All the pollution has taken its toll on society and the planet, to the extent that we are so extremely disassociated as beings, that slavery seems so appealing that we choose it at every corner, pretty much with every step we take. We do so by working in jobs that we hate, paying unjust taxes, going to church, being reckless consumers, and by trusting the public media. The toxic additives in our food and drink merely speed up the process of mental enslavement, whereas politicians, policemen, and soldiers joyfully throw in their physical selves as well. Most pharmaceuticals don't cure, they merely mask symptoms. All natural and organic produce is under threat of illegalization and genetic modification. Yet the general public continues to believe the lies of the establishment, and thus making herbs and remedies that have successfully been used for millennia a laughable and ineffective solution to today's diseases. At this point, ask yourselves, has this madness not completely gone out of control?
The sound is gone.
The quest for liberation, the quest for deliverance from thinking that you are just you, and realizing after all who you are.
Conspiracies are nothing new. They existed for millennia, since the dawn of the civilization. Julius Caesar was killed through a conspiracy, as were many emperors and leaders in old times. John F. Kennedy became victim of a conspiracy, this is proven. Yet with all this history, never before have people been so easily inured, so easily manipulated, as they have in modern times. Never before have people been so unaware and in denial about conspiracies, as they are in the present day. The most instrumental factor in this case is the public media, as well as what many would call public relations. With the rise of the public media came collective brainwashing. Opinions were altered synthetically, and disinformation was presented en masse in order to cause confusion. In the end, it will come down to complete abolition of independent thought. The irony of this scenario? The fact that many will willingly and happily move toward this outcome, not knowing what the real agenda is, begging for solutions to problems that would never come into existence if the public refused to buy into them. Why has the human being become so easily controllable and dumbed down? It has to do with severe trauma that our ancestors experienced, and has been genetically and even spiritually carried through the generations.
By satisfying people's inner selfish desires, one made them happy and thus docile. It was the start of the all-consuming self, which has come to dominate our world today.
People like Edward Bernays were aware of this. He was the nephew of Sigmund Freud and is often referred to as the father of public relations. He knew that historically the human being can be psychologically influenced, and masses can be controlled by spreading propaganda that will ultimately affect individual opinions and actions, whether this propaganda was truth or not. At the early part of the 20th century, he convinced women to smoke, and therefore achieved a massive rise in tobacco sales. He did so by staging a public demonstration stating women should smoke in order to liberate themselves. Corporations hence used Bernays for his exceptional skill and knowledge of human nature. He knew that if a human was dumbed down enough and subjected to fearful scenarios, they would pretty much agree to anything that will offer them a solution. Without research, without question, they will do as the Big Brother demands. The trick is to give them the illusion of choice and to never reveal your true intentions. Many others followed in the footsteps of Bernays, mainly serving the interests of corporate mega-tycoons such as the Rockefellers, J.P. Morgan, DuPont, as well as many political figures who needed a public makeover.
What the corporations realized they had to do was transform the way the majority of Americans thought about products. One leading Wall Street banker, Paul Mazur of Lehman Brothers, was clear about what was necessary. We must shift America, he wrote, from a needs to a desires culture. People must be trained to desire, to want new things even before the old have been entirely consumed. We must shape a new mentality in America. Man's desires must overshadow his needs. Bernays set out to experiment with the minds of the popular classes. His most dramatic experiment was to persuade women to smoke. At that time, there was a taboo against women smoking, and one of his early clients, George Hill, the president of the American Tobacco Corporation, asked Bernays to find a way of breaking it.
He said, we're losing half of our market because men have invoked a taboo against women smoking in public. Can you do anything about that? I said, let me think about it. And then I said, have I your permission to see a psychoanalyst to find out what cigarettes mean to women? He said, what'll it cost? So I called up Dr. Brill, A.A. Brill, who was a leading psychoanalyst in New York at that time.
How come you didn't call your uncle? Why didn't you call your uncle?
Because he was in Vienna.
A.A. Brill was one of the first psychoanalysts in America. And for a large fee, he told Bernays that cigarettes were a symbol of the penis and of male sexual power. He told Bernays that if he could find a way to connect cigarettes with the idea of challenging male power, then women would smoke, because then they would have their own penises. Every year, New York held an Easter Day parade to which thousands came, and Bernays decided to stage an event there. He persuaded a group of rich debutantes to hide cigarettes under their clothes. Then they should join the parade, and at a given signal from him, they were to light up the cigarettes dramatically. Bernays then informed the press that he had heard that a group of suffragettes were preparing to protest by lighting up what they called torches of freedom.
He knew this would be an outcry, and he knew that all of the photographers would be there to capture this moment. And so he was ready with a phrase which was torches of freedom. And so here you have a symbol, women, young women, debutantes, smoking a cigarette in public with a phrase that means anybody who believes in this kind of equality pretty much has to support them in the ensuing debate about this, because torches of freedom. I mean, what's on all American coins? It's liberty. She's holding up the torch, you see? And so all of this is there together. There's emotion, there's memory, there's a rational phrase, even though it's using a lot of emotional elements. It's a phrase that works in a rational sense. All of this is together. And so the next day, this was not just in all of the New York papers, it was across the United States and around the world. And from that point forward, the sale of cigarettes to women began to rise. He had made them socially acceptable with a single symbolic act.
What Bernays had created was the idea that if a woman smoked, it made her more powerful and independent, an idea that still persists today.
In order to master a game of chess, you will need to have this to begin with: patience, a sense of timing, knowledge of your opponent, and the willingness to make absolutely any sacrifice. We are the pieces on their chessboard. They have centuries of patience. Everything in their realms is immaculately timed. They know us inside out, better than most of us know ourselves, and they are most certainly willing to make any sacrifice that is needed. It comes as no surprise to us that the outcome of this particular game is predetermined. So what can we do to change the outcome? Wise up. We live in a time where lies are bought as the Holy Grail and truth is ridiculed and ignored at every corner. We are made to believe that we're evolving, where in reality we are devolving. we may have achieved a very efficient use for the left side of our brain, the logical and calculative side that can be easily influenced by fear. As far as the right side of our brain is concerned, the spiritual and intuitive side that is in touch with the elements and the cosmos, we have been programmed to ignore this side. With great success indeed. This is the reason why so many of us are so utterly confused about spirituality and our own lives and our purpose. If the elitists gave us all of this access to this essential knowledge, there would be no one left to control, no one to enslave, and consequently they would lose their power.
The philosophy of behaviorism is deceptively simple. It suggests that organisms can be viewed as flesh and blood machines. Like machines, we require fuel. Like machines, we can be put to work for a specific cause. Like machines, we can be repaired or redesigned for new purposes. And like machines, we can be compelled into performing a certain action at the push of a button. The science of human behavior had always intrigued philosophers, but it wasn't until the Enlightenment and the era of capitalist industrialization that men began to think that they could control life forms in the same way they controlled objects.
I don't believe personally that the answer to psychopathy is to be found in brain-altering chemicals to change the nature of our society in that artificial way. I think what we ought to start doing is teaching people about the dignity and value and the sacredness of human life, and teaching people how to behave towards one another.
What effect all of this has on society is pretty apparent. An increasingly younger population is suffering from either mental, physical, or terminal diseases. There are raids on gang warfare going on in cities all around the world. Poverty and starvation are thriving. Everyone who stands alone in his opinions and beliefs is vilified. The minority doesn't count. Social, racial, and sexual equality is no better than it was in the past. The only difference is now we can sue each other and get compensation. Society's leaders are the reflection of society's mindset. If you yourself are ignorant and complacent, don't be surprised if someone will take advantage of that. A government? A regime? We only need to look at history to see the bigger picture. Obviously not just the history that mainstream teaches us, but other alternative theories. It's the only way to obtain true knowledge and to have a chance to form your own opinions, not those of others. Of course, we all have people whose words we cherish more than others, but ultimately the choice has to come from within, not because anyone else approves of it. Healthy food is essential for a long and healthy life. That is precisely why the elite don't want us to have access to it, or rather keep us in the illusion that we have got access or choices, when in reality things look very different. A healthy person is just as profitable to the pharmaceutical industry as an indestructible car is to the motor industry. Long term, there is no profit margin. On top of this, there is a higher agenda. But in order to understand what this is, we must first of all understand our heritage and our origins, because that's where it all started, and that's where we can find many of the answers we need to be able to grasp the purpose of our very existence. It is therefore necessary to explore these origins and lift the veil of secrecy once and for all in order to see where we started, where we are, and where we're going.